In the year 8000 BC, a huge spaceship suddenly appears in the sky and begins descending over a tribal community. All the villagers immediately flee in fear except for one guy that can't stop staring at the beam of light coming out of the ship. Later in Egypt in the 1920s, an excavation is taking place at the foot of the pyramids. When an important foreign professor arrives with his daughter Catherine, one of the excavators immediately takes him to see what they've found, a series of mysterious cover stones. Meanwhile, Catherine's looking at some smaller artifacts and becomes fascinated by a gold necklace with the Eye of Ra. At that moment, the crowd begins yelling when the excavators hoist up an even bigger object, a giant circular metal ring with a jackal-headed figure buried underneath. Years later in 1994, an older Catherine is in the USA to attend a lecture by Daniel, an expert on ancient Egypt and its languages. He's telling a bunch of academics to consider his theories on how the pyramids were first constructed, but he's only made fun of and everyone leaves before he can finish. Afterward, when Daniel is trying to leave the hotel, Lieutenant Kowalski approaches him and makes him get into a car where Catherine is waiting. She offers Daniel a job without giving him any details, and when Daniel hesitates, she points out that he's been evicted from his apartment, his grants have run out, and this is the chance to prove his theories, so Daniel accepts. Meanwhile, in a peaceful suburb, two officers go looking for Colonel O'Neill, who is currently in his dead child's bedroom. It turns out his kid died while playing with his dad's gun, and O'Neill never moved on. The officers interrupt O'Neill's depression to tell him he's been reactivated. Moments later in Colorado, Daniel and Catherine enter an Air Force base under a mountain. Daniel is taken to a lab where they have the cover stones found in 1928, which Daniel finds very impressive. However, when he sees the translation on the board, he immediately begins fixing all the mistakes. The resulting sentence says 1,000,000 years into the sky is Ra, sun god, sealed and buried for all time in his Stargate. 2 weeks later, Daniel is still working hard on translating the rest of the tablets, yet he still can't find a language that matches the symbols on them. Needing a break, he goes out to grab a drink and finds a guard reading a newspaper with an article about the Orion constellation. The picture inspires Daniel and he grabs the newspaper before running back to the lab, where he grabs a marker and starts filling in the lines between the stars of the constellation. He then climbs the stair ladder to compare his drawing with one of the glyphs, confirming they match. Moments later, Daniel attends a meeting with all the scientists and the officers and spreads a star chart on the table, explaining all the symbols on the tablets were constellations placed in a unique order to form a map with 7 points to outline a course to a position. Then he makes a drawing to explain that to find a destination within any three-dimensional space, one needs 6 points to determine the exact location, and the 7th point is the origin, which he indicates with another drawing of 2 humans next to a V symbol. The others point out the symbol isn't on the device, and when Daniel wonders what they mean, the wall goes up to reveal they have the Stargate found in Egypt, which is made from a mineral not found on Earth. In the control room, they activate the Stargate, which begins spinning around. A screen shows close-up images of all the constellation glyphs, and Daniel notices one that looks like a pyramid with a circle above it. He grabs a marker and adds 2 little stick figures next to it, proving his theory right. They immediately program the 7th symbol into the gate and this activates condition red, so they make all the personnel evacuate. Suddenly a shaking starts and the computer monitors go crazy as Earth is marked as the point of origin. The shaking keeps getting worse and suddenly the Stargate activates with a giant vortex streaming outwards front and back, leaving a vertical wall of water. Orders are given to send in a probe, which moves up the ramp and stops in front of the gate to send through an arm. The arm continues to extend, then the probe is pulled through the Stargate. The computer analyzes the information and they discover the probe has locked itself onto a point somewhere in the Kalium galaxy. Daniel checks the map and reveals that's on the other side of the known universe just before they start losing signal and the wormhole shuts down. Sometime later, they analyze the pictures sent back by the probe, which show a room and another Stargate, so they assume both gates are connected. Readings also indicate the planet is an atmospheric match for humans. Daniel looks at the symbols on the other gate and points out they aren't the same as theirs. The officers want to abort the project because to use the other gate they'd have to do a reconnaissance mission, but Daniel tells them he doesn't mind going and doing the work himself. The team begins preparing for the mission, and O'Neill goes to look at the fossil of the jackal-headed man while a superior gives him a secret goal. Meanwhile, Catherine approaches Daniel to gift him her Ra necklace as a token of good luck. Once everyone is ready, the team enters the gate room, where the wormhole is already active. First they send the equipment rover, which easily goes through the vortex. Then the men cross the gate too, amazed by all the lights that surround them as they are teleported across the universe. Suddenly the team finds themselves in a very dark room with the other gate. With the help of a few flares, they inspect the room and make their way out through a corridor, where they discover the building is a replica of the Great Pyramid of Giza and they're in the middle of a desert. Daniel is supposed to realign the Stargate, but he reveals he can't do that yet because he needs an order of alignment. He had assumed this gate would also have tablets, but they aren't there, so they need to find those symbols first. The soldiers get angry with Daniel for getting them stuck here and Kowalski shoves Daniel to the ground, but O'Neill stops him before things escalate. While the team sets up camp, O'Neill goes back into the pyramid and opens a hidden panel on the rover, where he sets a cylindrical device and begins arming it to make a bomb. Once it's done, he adds a timer, pausing when he sees someone approaching. He closes the panel as Kowalski announces the camp is ready. Back in the camp, the other soldiers bother Daniel and throw his suitcase out on the dunes for getting them stuck here. Daniel starts the tedious task of picking his stuff up, only pausing to get a snack. While he looks around, he notices some large animal paw prints in the sand and starts to follow them, which takes him to a large creature munching on desert vegetation. The animal has a harness, but there aren't any people around. Daniel approaches the animal and gently pets it, offering his candy. At that moment O'Neill and the others arrive and tell him to stay away from potential danger, but Daniel tells them the harness indicates it's domesticated. However, the arrival of the soldiers spooks the creature and causes it to start running away, getting its harness entangled with Daniel's feet. As the beast runs, a screaming Daniel is dragged through the hot sand for many miles until he eventually passes out. Moments later, Daniel is woken up when the beast licks his face and the soldiers finally catch up to him, freeing him from the harness. Suddenly they hear some noises and the team walks to the top of the dune to discover some tall rock pillars and lots of people mining them. A boy named Skara notices the soldiers and yells a warning, making all the other people freeze as the team decides to approach them. When the people see Daniel's necklace, they all bow to him. O'Neill approaches Skara to shake his hand as a sign of peace, but Skara yells and runs away. One of the soldiers scans the mineral that is being mined and discovers it's the same mineral used for the gate. At that moment, Skara comes back bringing the leader Kasuf with him. Kasuf says a few words and bows, but although Daniel recognizes some of the sounds, he can't understand him. Then Kasuf's daughter Shorai and other women offer the team some bowls with a drink. In return, Daniel gives Kasuf some candy, which he hesitantly bites and finds delicious. Thanks to this exchange, the team is invited to stay with them. O'Neill accepts but also makes sure to tell the soldiers that stayed in the camp to secure the area. Moments later, the team is walking through the desert with the caravan until they reach an expansive stone city. When Daniel sneezes because of his allergies and blows his nose, the others find it amusing, and Skara even takes his handkerchief as a joke. Once they're inside the city, all the people bow again as they reveal a large disk of the Eye of Ra. Daniel explains that the people think that the Egyptian sun god Ra sent the team here. Suddenly all the people begin running around and O'Neill gets a call from camp, but it can't be heard because of all the static. At the camp, the soldiers are getting surrounded by a sandstorm, so they decide to pick up their things and run inside the pyramid. In the city, people are running to the gates to close them up. Thinking they're being captured, the soldiers run after them and punch a few people before taking 2 men hostage. Skara cuts in to take O'Neill to the top of the wall, where he shows him that a sandstorm is approaching. O'Neill finally understands the citizens had only been protecting the city and tells the team they're going to be stuck here for a while. In the evening, the citizens throw a big party and the team is given some new food to try. Daniel tries a weird-looking animal and is delighted to announce it tastes like chicken. Afterward, Daniel tries to communicate by drawing some Egyptian symbols on the sand, but Kasuf immediately obliterates the writing with his foot, apparently drawing the symbols is forbidden. Then Daniel is taken to another room, where they clean him up before leaving him alone. Suddenly Shorai comes in and begins undressing, making Daniel freak out. He explains that's not necessary and tries to make her leave, but outside Kasuf is waiting for them to do the dirty. Not wanting to insult Kasuf or get Shorai in trouble, Daniel takes her back into the tent and waits around to make it seem they're busy. Daniel draws the pyramid on the sand and Shorai adds a circle to it, revealing she's seen the circle before. Daniel convinces her to take him to it. Meanwhile, the soldiers in the pyramid still can't make the radio work. Suddenly a bright light shines down on the pyramid and everything starts to shake. A huge spaceship appears above, slowly engulfing the pyramid until it's completely covered. The soldiers get nervous and with their weapons out they spread out to investigate, however something begins attacking them in the darkness. One by one the soldiers are knocked out without a single noise until there's only one man left. He falls to the ground and when he turns around he sees a guard with Anubis face. This mysterious person and another guard drag the soldiers into another room, where there's a glowing sarcophagus from which a hand comes out. Back in the city, Skara sees O'Neill smoking and is impressed by the fire. O'Neill gifts him the lighter and some cigarettes, and Skara tries to smoke by copying O'Neill only to end up coughing. Then Skara tries to grab a gun, but O'Neill slaps him away and Skara runs out in fear. In the meantime, Shorai takes Daniel to a cave where they find a bunch of earth glyphs written on the wall. Daniel begins reading them in the Egyptian he knows, and Shorai corrects his pronunciation, which finally allows him to learn the local language. Back to O'Neill, he asks Skara and the other boys about Daniel by making hand gestures to describe him. The boys just keep copying the gestures without understanding, but when O'Neill mentions chicken and pretends to sneeze, Skara finally understands and offers Daniel's jacket to its creature, which begins tracking the scent and everyone follows it. Minutes later, O'Neill finds Daniel in the cave, and Daniel begins explaining everything he's learned from the writing. A space traveler escaped from a dying world looking for a way to extend his own life. He arrived on Earth and found the very primitive humans, which is the scene from the beginning. This traveler was Ra, who took over a human body and appointed himself ruler. He used the Stargate to bring thousands of people to this planet as workers for the mines, and with that ore, he could build all the technology to sustain eternal life. Then a rebellion happened back on Earth and the Stargate was buried there. Wanting to avoid another rebellion here, Ra outlawed reading and writing so people wouldn't remember the truth. While Daniel talks, Kowalski is looking around the cave and finds a round stone like the one in the center of the Earth Stargate. Daniel is excited because this is what he's missing, and he thinks the citizens must have hidden it here in hopes the Earth Stargate would someday be reactivated. Unfortunately, the stone is broken and worn out, so Daniel can't see the seventh symbol. Tired of all this, O'Neill announces they're returning to the pyramid, and the team takes off while Scar and his friends follow them. When they find the spaceship, they immediately get worried, so they enter the area with their weapons out while Scar's group sneaks around to look through the windows. Inside they find the team's camp things, but not a single body. Suddenly the mysterious guard appears, and before the soldier can react, he gets knocked out by the guard's staff. This staff is capable of shooting like a gun, so the guard begins shooting all over the room while the rest of the team runs away. Daniel and O'Neill make it to the room with the bomb, only to find it gone. Suddenly the circular section of the ceiling opens and rings lower as a light beam begins glowing. 3 guards show up and aim their staff weapons. Daniel and O'Neill put their guns down and are taken through the beam of light until they reach a throne room with walls that are now opening to let in the sunlight. At that moment the leader shows up, bringing up the bomb with him. Then everyone takes off their masks, revealing they're just human and not supernatural beings. The leader turns out to be Ra, and when the guards kneel to him, O'Neill quickly moves to knock the guard back and take his staff. Then he fires and kills one of the guards, but before he can turn around, the other guard has his weapon aimed. Daniel jumps between them and gets shot instead while a bunch of children surround Ra to protect him. Then a guard takes his staff back and begins beating O'Neill up before Ra tells him to stop and approaches Daniel to look at the necklace. Afterward, O'Neill is thrown into a water pit with all the other soldiers. Outside, Scar's group is searching the soldiers' bags for weapons when they notice 2 gliders coming out of the pyramid and flying away. In the city, Kasuf sees the gliders too and raises the alarm, so people try to run and hide. The gliders fire down on the city, shooting blasts all over the place. Kasuf kneels to ask for mercy, but the gliders continue to blast away, killing many people and doing great damage to the town. After a few passes, the gliders leave. Then Scar's group comes back and sees all the death and destruction. Kasuf tells Scar this is Ra's punishment for having helped the strangers. Moments later in the pyramid, Daniel wakes up in the sarcophagus and discovers his wound has been healed. When he comes out, the sarcophagus closes on its own, and a kid with a cat comes to check on Daniel before running away. Daniel follows him until he arrives at Ra's chambers. When Daniel asks if he had been dead, Ra explains he chose humans precisely because their bodies are easy to repair. He says they shouldn't have reopened the gate because now he'll send the bomb back with a shipment of the special mineral that will increase the bomb's destructive power 100-fold. He created civilization, but now he wants to destroy it for their betrayal and prove he's the only god, starting by taking Daniel's necklace. In the cave, Scar and his group go looking for Shorai to tell her that Ra has called for an assembly with an execution. However, Shorai proceeds to share the story Daniel revealed so they can finally know the truth about their people. Moments later, all the citizens surround the pyramid for the assembly. Ra and his guards appear wearing their masks and they give Daniel a staff, ordering him to kill the soldiers. At that moment, Shorai, Skara, and the boys mingle in the crowd. Skara uses the lighter to reflect the sunlight and get Daniel's attention, showing him that they've got the soldiers' weapons. Catching on the plan, Daniel pretends he'll kill his friends only to turn around and shoot the throne instead. The boys shoot their weapons too and everyone begins running around in panic as the guards shoot their staffs at them. A few people die in the process, including one of the soldiers, but everyone else gets to escape. However, moments later, the team gets stuck in a sandstorm and Daniel collapses. Luckily, Skara and his friends show up, helping Daniel up before they guide the team out of the storm. Eventually they reach a cave where everyone is hiding. Skara shows the soldiers the weapons they recovered, and O'Neill wants to take them all back. Kowalski says the boys could help them fight and this makes O'Neill furious for no reason, so Daniel makes him talk about the bomb. O'Neill explains he had secret orders to track down signs of any possible danger and if he found any, he had to blow up the Stargate. Daniel tells them about Ra's plan and points out it's Earth's gate that poses the threat and should be shut down, but Daniel still hasn't got the 7th symbol so they can't do that. O'Neill promises he'll intercept the bomb before it can be sent through. Meanwhile, Ra is furious because his guards failed to capture the team, so he puts a special device in his hand and proceeds to use it to kill a guard in a slow and painful way. Back in the cave, Daniel learns that everyone thinks Shorai is his wife. When he asks her about it, Shorai explains he didn't tell anyone that Daniel didn't want her, and to prove her wrong Daniel kisses her. The next morning, Daniel finds Skara making a drawing of their victory. Seeing the 3 moons, Daniel tries connecting them and realizes this is the symbol for this planet and therefore the point of origin. Now they can go home. Afterward, the group goes to the mines where the citizens are being used as slaves again and shoots a guard, causing Kasuf and his people to panic. Daniel rushes to take the guard's mask off, revealing it's just a tyrant human slaving them and not a god, shocking everyone. In the pyramid, the guards are getting the bomb ready. The team arrives pretending to be slaves carrying ore, and once they're inside, They reveal their weapons and open fire. A firefight begins as more people enter the pyramid to help. Some men fall during the fight and one of the guards shoots at the door to seal the entrance, but O'Neill shoots back to kill him. Suddenly gliders leave the pyramid again and attack the people outside, so Kowalski guides them on how to hide and retaliate. They lose a few men in the process, so Kowalski decides to give up as a few guards approach. In his chambers, Ra is furious that he's losing the battle and orders his men to send the bomb to Earth now. At that moment the team reaches the bomb and O'Neill activates it, explaining he'll stay on this side to blow it up after everyone returns to Earth. Suddenly a guard shows up and shoots Shorei, deadly wounding her before Daniel shoots back to kill him. Desperate, Daniel picks her up and takes advantage of the opening ceiling to take her to the sarcophagus, which instantly heals Shorei. Meanwhile from the opening ceiling, another guard comes out and starts to fight O'Neill. At the same time Ra finds Daniel and begins hurting him with his artifact glove. With only 3 minutes left on the bomb, O'Neill keeps hitting the guard until he manages to overpower him and activates the gem on his hand, which makes the rings come down. O'Neill puts the guard under them so the rings kill him. The rings also activate in the other room and distract Ra, giving Daniel the chance to take the necklace back before the rings take him and Shorei back to the bomb room. Outside, the guards are about to capture all the rebels when suddenly Kasuf arrives with all his people and surrounds the guards to kill them in seconds. Seeing this defeat, Ra activates his spaceship, which starts racing to take him away. In the pyramid, O'Neill tries to disarm the bomb but can't because Ra rigged it, but luckily he gets an idea. When the rings activate again, they send the bomb through them and it shows up in the spaceship, where it explodes and finally kills Ra. Everyone on the planet celebrates and Skara and the boys salute for O'Neill, who salutes back to thank them with respect. Moments later, Daniel activates the Stargate and gives the necklace to O'Neill so he can take it to Catherine because he's decided to stay here with Shorei. The soldiers cross the gate and through the bright lights, they finally go home.